Europe is a continent of contrasts, with ancient landscapes and icons of modern civilization, from the densely populated central areas to the sheer endless expanses of Russia. It's home to invaluable natural monuments, from the highest peaks of the Alps to the coast of the Great Ocean. Geologist Colin Devey is on an expedition across Europe.
It's a huge continent and there's lots to discover.
He's on a quest to experience the beauty of European nature.
Fascinating.
And discover amazing landscapes packed with mysteries. They bear evidence of lost inhabitants, their origins, and their transformations. Accompany Colin Devey on a journey through the natural history of a continent, from prehistoric beginnings to the present day. Rough terrain marks the northwest of the continent. Scotland has some of the most pristine landscapes in Europe. It's June, the last full moon before the summer solstice. A Stone Age cult site on Lewis Island. These stones have been here for 3,000 years. Experts believe their arrangement follows the course of the moon. They emit a special magic, especially now in the bright summer nights. The rock that makes up these monuments holds a deeper meaning for the island and its inhabitants. It's the basic substance of this landscape. People built their houses from it as protection against the changeable weather. The robust rock also provides shelter for many animals. Large populations of seabirds breed on the steep cliffs, such as common murres, whose young are now hatching. Razorbills and cormorants. The soft earth beneath the rocks is ideal for puffins to dig their nests. They are undisturbed here. The young are safe, and the cliffs provide perfect starting points for an excursion. A diverse ecosystem has developed around these rocks. It's one of the richest habitats in Europe. And it's not just about the big animals. Countless microorganisms live in the water, which in turn attract fish and larger predators. Here, there's plenty for everyone. The northern gannet pierces the deep at high speed to catch prey. This is a natural paradise thriving on stone.
Welcome to the beautiful island of Lewis. Now, it's the middle of summer, but it's really quite cold. The reason for that lies 2,000 kilometers in this direction. It's the southern tip of Greenland. And between us, there's only the open North Atlantic. Now, the landscape here is raw and ancient, and that fits really well with the rocks. These rocks are called gneiss. They're very hard and solid, and they were formed 3 billion years ago. They're some of the oldest rocks in the whole of Europe. They were formed deep in the earth under high pressure and high temperature, and that's made them very compact and very resistant to erosion, and that's why we still find them here. And they form the core, the nucleus of our continent. Now, originally, these rocks were laid down on the floor of an ocean as the Earth was only a quarter as old as it is now. And that Earth was a way different place to what we find here.
Even rock changes. A few millennia ago, the coastline might have looked like this. This rock gate does not yet exist. The mighty ocean is still hard at work here. And 3 billion years ago, not even the coast exists yet. A huge ocean lies under a hostile atmosphere. Islands, small primordial continents, are formed by volcanic activity. And something's happening in the ocean. The chemical composition is right. As the perfect combination of nearly infinite variables align, the first life forms emerge. So far, they are only simple organisms, the first steps of evolution. That's when it happens. In the depth, the Lewis gneiss begins to form under extreme conditions. High temperatures and immense pressure shape the stone, which today is one of the oldest in Europe. This is how the first chapters of European natural history were written in the sea. Colin Devey accompanies fishermen to the Scottish Sea. As a geologist, he's a specialist in the development of the oceans and their natural history.
So the core of our continent was produced 3 billion years ago. That's an impossible amount of time to grasp, isn't it? But even then, there was an ocean. And life on Earth probably developed in that ocean. And even now, the creatures that live in the ocean are very old types of life. Hopefully we're catching some of them right now. I'm terribly interested to see what these guys are going to bring on board.
Since the emergence of Lewis gneiss, life on Earth has developed rapidly. And the ocean still holds traces of that development. With every catch, fishermen capture a piece of prehistory.
Okay, the fishermen have given me some things from their catch. Let's have a look and see what they got. First up is this little cod. What a beauty. It's one of the bony fishes, and bony fish appeared on our planet about 200 million years ago. Now, another bony fish, of course, things like this, the plays. What else have we got? Oh, langoustines. They're a member of the crustaceans, and crustaceans are also a very old type of life. 380 million years old is the first fossil that we know of the crustacean. And last but not least, a real treasure. This is a lamprey. Now, lampreys are a member of a really, really old type of life. They're not fish. They don't have any lower jaw, so they can't chew things. And their ancestors lived in the oceans 540 million years ago. Now, this guy looks as if he's still alive. I'm going to put him back.
A truly peculiar prehistoric animal, the lamprey, an elegant swimmer in its familiar environment. This parasite feeds by boring into the flesh of other fish to suck their blood. It's extremely rare and particularly protected in Europe. Their natural home is the cold, oxygen-rich waters of the north, where many creatures remind us of a bygone era. Prehistoric animals are widespread, like the crab or the moon jellyfish. The basking shark also seems like a relic from the past. These majestic animals roam thousands of kilometers through the sea every year. But what did the ocean really look like over 500 million years ago? plants have already lived in the sea for a long time now, but animals are rapidly catching up. Mysterious worms leave their traces in the sediment of the seabed. Jellyfish are the first animals to swim through the sea with their own muscle power. Predators appear, many of them strange arthropods with claws and compound eyes. An amazing variety of trilobites live on the ocean floor. They have robust exoskeletons that protect them from predators. All main groups of the animal kingdom develop at this time, including the ancestor of the lamprey. It possesses a special innovation of evolution, a spine, that provides stability and bolsters its locomotion. Sharks came later in evolution, but these sea dwellers, so different in age and size, still meet to this day. For the basking shark, the lamprey is an annoying parasite. Scotland's waters are richly populated with prehistoric animals. Perhaps this explains why some legends have persisted through the generations.
It's a strange and kind of mystical place, isn't it, Loch Ness? I remember when I was a kid, we came here with the family on holiday, and my parents went swimming in there. Not a chance that I would have joined them. And even now, I'm not going in. Although, of course, as a scientist, I know there is no such thing as monsters. Geologically speaking, this is also a very interesting place. And about the same time as those creatures that we just seen were developing out in the oceans, here, two continents were colliding. Let's have a look. On the one side, there's Laurentia. That's what we now call America. On the other side, Baltica. That's Norway and Sweden. And they collided right here, producing a huge mountain range. Now, I can tell you about it from down here, but I can show it to you from up in the mountains.
Loch Ness is located in the heart of the Scottish Highlands. With a relatively low population density, there's enough space for nature. The ascent is steep, and soon the forest thins out. Colin encounters the inhabitants of the raised bogs. Here, where the black grouse fight in early summer, the typical landscape of the Highlands blossoms. Heather adds a special shine to the already amazing view. For a short time, the otherwise barren highlands explode in a unique splendor of color.
Well, that climb was worth it, of course, for the scenery, but also for the geology. Just look at it. I'm standing on Baltica. Over there, the other side of Loch Ness, is Laurentia. The Great Glen Fault runs through here and separated those two continents. 500 million years ago, there was a huge mountain range here. Wow. Now, the whole area will have been shaken time and time again by earthquakes because we know that these two continents rubbed past each other over 200 kilometers. Wind and weather has worn the mountains down to stumps now. Now, the last thing that happened here was during the last ice age. A glacier carved out Loch Ness. And although it's a really impressive lake, it's nowhere near the total length of this plate boundary.
The elongated shape of the famous lake hints that it's part of a much larger structure. Loch Ness belongs to a border of continental dimensions that stretches across the northern hemisphere. This structure was created some 450 million years ago. The collision of two old continents led to the formation of Europe's first primeval mountain range, the Caledonides. The romantic landscapes of the Scottish Highlands still bear witness to the former high mountain range. The next chapter of European natural history is written in Central Europe. Colin crosses the North Sea. He's headed south in search of the center of the continent. The European mainland. Here lie the most densely populated areas of Europe, with their cities, industry, and traffic. Large metropolitan regions. Paris, one of the centers of European culture. And further southeast, Frankfurt, a major financial hub. However, the geographical center of the continent is further east. Regensburg, southwest of the Bavarian forest. The landscape forms a unit with the Bohemian forests of the Czech Republic, one of the oldest regions of Central Europe in geological history, and the center of the continent. On a small mountain, the Tillenberg.
And there I am, the middle of Europe, and about 10 meters from the Czech-German border. Now, of course, the midpoint of a continent is impossible to define, but Austrian scientists 150 years ago said this is where it is. And so we've got this beautiful stone standing here. But this place is important for other reasons. 350 million years ago, two continents collided here. And for the first time ever, Europe existed as a single unit. At the same time, a massive mountain range was built, probably the largest mountains that this planet's ever seen, and they formed a band around half the globe.
The remains of these mountains can still be found all over Europe, mostly not higher than 1,800 meters.
But nevertheless, these Mittelgebirge, as they're called, running all through Europe, are some of the most beautiful landscapes we have.
From the Ural Mountains in the east to the Rhine in the west, Germany is home to the remains of the so-called Varicides, named after an ancient Germanic tribe. They're a welcome retreat for wild animals in the otherwise densely populated area. After facing near extinction, the Eurasian lynx roams through some of these forests again. The wild boar is a different case altogether. It's among the most adaptable of all wild animals and can be found almost anywhere. In September, stags gather in the clearings for the rutting season. But the forest is much more than just the home of these typical inhabitants. It's a living system, functioning like a single entity in minute detail. Many creatures depend on each other, like mosaic pieces, forming one big whole. They all create the habitat that we know as the enchanting forest of the central uplands, important natural areas throughout Europe. The Massif Central in southern France. With its gently rising slopes, Mont Caroux is a typical remnant from the time of the Varicides. Today, only about 1,000 meters high. A perfect home for wild sheep, mouflon. These graceful animals are often seen on Mont Carew. They search the Eric River Valley for food. The Massif Central is a popular destination for hikers, an exciting stage for Colin Devey's research. The Gorge d'Eric offers hints to the great past of the Varicides.
So how can we know that these gently rolling hills are all that remains of a once gigantic mountain range? We can look back into the past in this gorge, and the rocks will tell us something about how big the mountain range really was.
The water has done a remarkable job. The constant force of the stream has hollowed out the rock massif. The gorge leads several kilometers into the mountain. 350 million years ago, these rocks formed the base of the highest mountain range of all time.
So we're now right in the middle of the mountain, and the rocks are telling us everything we need to know about the enormous pressures and temperatures they've experienced. The high pressure has made the minerals separate from one another and produce this banding, and the high temperatures caused these big white crystals to form. The temperatures were in some places so high that the rocks started to melt. If we look up behind me here, you see this white vein. It's magma produced deep underground and pressed out of the rock, and it's flown up towards the surface. Gives us some impression of how huge this mountain range must have been.
The traces of the magma flows are everywhere. These areas used to bear the burden of the mountains. 350 million years ago, it was a truly gigantic mountain range, wider and higher than the Himalayas today. It stretched across half the globe and was so wide that today it would straddle the distance from the south of France to Norway. A time full of contrasts. Extensive swamp forests lie in the valleys beyond the mountain peaks. They were home to the first land plants and giant insects, dragonflies as large as hawks. The forests are extremely productive. Peat forms in the ground and over time is transformed into coal. Bituminous coal, for us humans, an important fuel source and, for a long time, the driving force of European industrialization. Many old mines are decaying or declared monuments, like in the Ruhr area, which was at the center of Germany's economic growth in the 1950s and 60s. Globally, coal extraction is still on the rise. It's estimated that the black coal reserves formed over millions of years will last for only another century. Wherever coal mining towers stand today, there used to be swamp forests in the Carboniferous period. Portugal, the westernmost point of mainland Europe. The steady swell of the great ocean has formed a steep coast. On the cliffs, relics of the past come to light. The coast is more than 150 million years old. Working on the steep slope is risky, but scientists are often rewarded with sensational finds. Octavio Mateus, chief paleontologist, shows Colin Devey his findings. The ground is full of dinosaur bones.
These cliffs are made of rocks which are late Jurassic on age, about 152 million years. And here we see a sauropod bone. And in the same layer, we find 4 more. This telling there is probably an entire sauropod inside this cliff.
Oh, really?
Quite amazing. And look at that. That's a big sauropod bone. Right there, we see the original bone and the cast of a very large animal.
That was a very big sauropod, wasn't it? My
It was
goodness.
indeed.
My goodness.
It's one of the largest bones in the body of any vertebrate, a femur. And the femur's owner was one of the largest land creatures ever to set foot on our continent. A truly giant quadruped. It lived in the tropical coastal landscapes. In the late Jurassic, these habitats are very common almost everywhere in the world. Temperatures worldwide are higher than in modern times. Similar to today's elephants, sauropods have massive column-like legs that stand directly under their bodies to support the enormous weight. Over 35 tons and up to 30 meters long. These giants don't care for their offspring. They hide their eggs in the loose sand on the seashore. The young have to fend for themselves. A risky strategy, because there are plenty of predators roaming about, like this Allosaurus europaeus, one of the largest carnivores at the time. It's the heyday of the dinosaurs. They will rule the Earth for over 170 million years, an extremely long reign, during which their world and our continent changes dramatically.
Octavio and his team are finding amazing things in this cliff. The fascinating stuff is that they're finding exactly the same types of dinosaurs thousands of kilometers away over there in America. The dinosaur groups are so similar, they could almost be brother and sister. Now, how on earth can that happen? Well, the answer to that lies out there in the middle of the Atlantic.
The European and American coasts are more than 5,000 kilometers apart. And in the middle of this sheer, endless expanse is an abundance of life. A sperm whale, the largest toothed whale on Earth. This female has her calf. The young animal has to be nursed by its mother for almost 3 years. But they are not alone. Manta rays feed on plankton, tiny microorganisms that are difficult to see with the naked eye. And with them come many other fish, attracted by the nutrient-rich waters. The smaller fish, in turn, are followed by big hunters. But why is this mysterious meeting place here, in the middle of a vast ocean? It's these rocks rising from the sea floor, called seamounts. Nutrients are flushed up seamounts from the depths, making these waters extremely species-rich, from microscopic plankton to myriad fish. An underwater paradise, and Colin Devey is right in the middle of it.
It's amazing how many fish there are here. Oh, and there's quite a current. I could hold on tight. This is a biodiversity hotspot. And the reason for that are these rocks. They create an environment that attracts the fish. Absolutely astounding.
Situated in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the sea mountains offer protection and refuge to many marine animals. Between the rocks, there are numerous hiding places and caves. But how was the rock formed?
So I've had a look at these walls, and they're made completely of basalt lava. I'm in a lava tube that's been opened up by the waves. Because I'm on the top of a volcano, deep below me is really intense volcanic activity, and that's built this whole mountain. I'm gonna go and have a look around.
This whole area is extremely large. Colin's position can only be determined from a distance. The rock face is only a small point at the top of a mountain. The mountaintop, in turn, is only part of a massif. A whole mountain range. The longest mountain range on Earth, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, crosses the Atlantic Ocean, stretching 20,000 kilometers. But not all peaks end underwater. Some break through the surface. And some of them are large islands. The highest peaks of this undersea mountain range are well known to us. They are the Azores. The archipelago is where the European and North American plates meet and marks the actual western border of the European continent. The highest peak rises 2,350 meters above sea level, the steep tip of the island of Pico. Ponta do Pico is a volcano with a striking crater and sparse vegetation. It's a unique habitat with lichens, small bushes, and only a few animals surviving near the sparse summit. The lower regions are covered in enchanting subtropical rainforests. "300 kilometers further east, it is a whole different world. Santa Maria. This island is less rugged, with wide plains and gentle elevations. As different as these islands are, the stones here bear witness to a common origin.
This is a piece of basaltic lava, and you find pieces like this all over the Azores Islands because they're all volcanoes. But they look really different. The reason for those differences have to do with different ages, and age is really important in the Atlantic. Let's look at that in a bit more detail. This is the present-day Atlantic seafloor. Now, let's turn the clock back 240 million years. Europe and America are part of a supercontinent that we call Pangaea. If we let time run forward a little bit, we get to 220 million years. And the first little bit of water appears in the middle of that supercontinent. It's the birth of the Atlantic. And from that time on, the Atlantic is going to grow. Europe and America progressively move apart from one another. At 8 million years, a tiny little point appears in the middle of the Atlantic. That's Santa Maria. The other Azores islands appear one after the other. And at 300,000 years ago, Pico pops its head out of the water. And that's the reason why they look so different. There are 7 million years between those two islands. Every bit of the Atlantic seafloor has its own specific age. In the meantime, there are 5,000 kilometers between America and Europe, or, as a geologist would say, over 200 million years of Earth's history.
Like the entire Atlantic, The Azores were formed on the mid-Atlantic ridge, the young island of Pico, as well as the oldest island in the Azores, Santa Maria, whose mountains have already been worn down by millions of years of erosion. What all the islands have in common is that they are home to a unique, sensitive environment. Far away from the big continents, something special has developed here. Tarfius, a bark beetle, is one of the smallest inhabitants. It can be found on all the Azores Islands, but on each island, it looks a little different. The Azores bullfinch, also known as Priolo, is a finch that only exists here. These ancient islanders live side by side with the chaffinch, which was brought in by settlers, just like the Madeira lizard. The mid-Atlantic ridge has created small natural paradises, and new seabed is still being created here today. The west coast of Portugal was separated from America 220 million years ago. Since then, the distance between the continents has been growing by several centimeters each year. The great predator, Allosaurus, lived in Portugal 152 million years ago. Back then, the dinosaurs on both sides of the Atlantic looked very similar, like relatives, an indication that Europe and North America were connected for a long time. The Atlantic Ocean has had a crucial influence on the development of the European continent. Europe continues to change after the emergence of the Great Ocean. With temperatures rising worldwide, much of the continent is underwater, an island world. Its extent from west to east, however, already corresponded to the distance from Portugal to the Urals today. Colin Devey has set himself a goal: to walk through Europe from the southwest to the eastern border, an exciting journey through nature and time for the geologist. He crosses the Tabernas Desert in southern Spain and reaches the shores of the Mediterranean. North to the mouth of the Rhone, through the south of France and Switzerland, then to the foothills of the Alps, past rugged, towering mountains, followed by the extensive woodlands of the low mountain ranges, where winter arrives halfway through the route. Along the Masurian Lake District in Poland. It's only east from here, an enormous stretch through the forests of the Eastern European plains. After almost 7,000 kilometers, Colin reaches Yekaterinburg. The city is considered a border between Europe and Asia, and you can feel it on the streets. A gigantic column just outside the city is the final destination of Colin's journey.
Okay, I'll be honest with you, I didn't walk all that way in one go. even if I seem to have been going for quite a long time. At the end of the walk through this beautiful forested plain, you come upon this column. And this is really quite a rarity because it's a geological monument, and there aren't many of them on this planet. In the 1900s, the Tsar sent out many West European geologists in this region looking for riches in the ground. And amazingly, they found exactly the same types of rocks here as they knew from their homelands thousands of kilometers away. That is right up until this point, because here there's a fundamental change in the way the Earth is put together. To commemorate that, they put up this monument in 1837. Now, a change like that, which is of continental size, is difficult to see from down here. And to really appreciate it, we need to get a bit more of an overview.
That's because the junction from Europe to Asia is enormous. The Ural Mountains, vast landscapes and snow-covered ridges. Far up in the north, a mountain relief becomes recognizable. It has a long history. A look back into the past. "500 million years ago, this part of the world is mostly ocean. Siberia is an island. The Ural Mountains are formed at the same time as the low mountain ranges in Central Europe. It's the seam between Russia and Siberia and has been preserved to this day. It's not particularly high, but from north to south, it's almost 2,400 kilometers long. Colin and his crew have been dropped off. He's looking for a famous rock formation situated in the middle of a high plateau in the northern Urals. A bitter cold wind whistles, and meter-deep snow slows progress. But the goal is well worth the effort. They are considered one of the 7 wonders of Russia. The rock columns of Mampupunya. At 40 meters high, these sentinels watch over the vast expanses of the northern Urals. The locals tell tales of the so-called 7 strong men. According to legend, they were once threatening giants that were turned into stone. The climate in this area is extreme and dangerous. The weather's changing. In just a few moments, a raging blizzard arrives, and Colin Devey is right in the middle of it. Sudden weather changes are not unusual in late winter. With effort, Colin manages to reach his goal and finds protection in the slipstream of the gigantic columns.
I'm at the Mampupunya stones in the northern Urals. It's one of the natural wonders of Russia, and hardly surprising. I'm on a plateau at about 800 meters high, and the real question I've got is, how can stones like this survive, although the rest of the mountains have been removed? Why are they so resistant to weathering? Now, the answer's got to be in the rocks. So let's have a look at the rocks. Now, it's not surprising that that's a pretty hard piece of rock. It's composed almost entirely of quartz. There's some mica in there as well, and it's very compact. Water and frost is not going to be able to get into there. That's probably the reason why these columns are standing here. I've no idea how long they have stood here. It could be millions of years. And they're a real silent witness to the enormous mountain range that used to stand here.
These resilient stones stand on the edge of the largest contiguous primeval forest in Europe, situated in the Komi Republic. Many large mammals live here, most of which have become extremely rare in Central Europe. Winter is a hard time for moose, although they seem impervious to the freezing temperatures. Food is scarce, only tough bark and a few old shoots. It's hardly enough, and so the mighty animals lose a considerable amount of weight. Wolves are also at home here. Now in winter, they have to roam vast areas to catch prey. Food is only available under a meter-thick layer of snow. The fox takes what he can find. Winter is hard on these animals. However, they have all developed strategies to survive the cold in this extreme region. A region that once knew vastly different conditions. "65 million years ago, the temperatures are higher than today. It's pleasantly warm in the swamp forests of the Urals. It's at this time that the history of the pillars of Mamperpunya begins. Change is imminent. Flowering plants have been around for some time. Now, they are entering a lasting partnership. Bees help pollinate and spread flowering plants in exchange for pollen and nectar. And the world is still dominated by old animal groups. There are still many ancient plants in the forests. Mosses, ferns, and gigantic conifers. The forests are lush green all year round, with many slow-growing plants that do not shed their leaves, an impenetrable thicket. Hidden in there is a small rodent, Multituberculata. It shares many traits with modern mammals. A differentiated set of teeth to process food. Front paws for grasping, fur, and the ability to regulate body temperature. Properties that will prove useful. Radical changes are coming. And they're coming fast. After a global catastrophe, temperatures are falling worldwide. The climate is changing rapidly. Only those who adapt quickly to the new conditions have a chance of survival. Seed plants and mammals emerge from the crisis stronger than before. Both seem to have been made for bad times. For many mammals, the forests of the Urals are still a safe haven. And these ancient columns still stand guard. Colin Devey has finished his expedition to the stones of Mamperpunya. It's time to return home.
Yeah, we've seen lots of Europe already, from the extreme northwest corner to here, where Europe butts up against Asia. It's a huge continent, and there's lots to discover. It's really worth taking the time to go out and look in detail. I have to go back to Germany tomorrow morning, but I'm going to spend a nice evening now with my new Russian friends in front of the log fire in this cozy wooden hut over here. See you next time.